Hello everyone, GoldenNova here, and it's time once again for Patron Week, where I go over an archetype voted on by my Nebula navigators, and today's video covers a candidate that's been in contention since the very beginning, but after smoldering in the ashes of defeat, it rises triumphantly to seize the spotlight.
Debuting in the 2005 core set, Flaming Eternity,
the Sacred Phoenix of Nephthys appeared and made an impact on the game like few cards ever had before, pioneering not just an effect that benefited from the monster's effect destruction by your opponent's hand, but by being destroyed in general, reviving during your next standby phase to wreak havoc on both players' back row. It's arguably the main influence for the fan-favorite archetype Fire Kings, right down to having a monster that's the dark hole to Nephthys' heavy storm. However, it wouldn't have enough cards to make a video on until 2018, when the deck build pack Hidden Summoners was released. By this point, we were a year into the newly unveiled Link format, and this set was all about seeing how the Blue Arrow aficionados could benefit other summoning mechanics rather than limit them. Prank Kids fused the mechanic with Fusion, Mayakashi synced it up with Synchros, and Nephthys was brought in to showcase how they worked with the mechanic most burdened by the recent Master Rule, Rituals, a mechanic that doesn't use the extra deck at all, that's known for being very resource intensive, and can't use Link monsters as ritual fodder because they don't have levels. Okay, so it's not the kind of design decision I would have made, but I'm not here to talk about what I would have done. This isn't Dream Theme. So without further ado, let's fire up the search engine to look up all these cards, go over how we'll perform our ritual of assured victory, then see what occult practices we can add to our own. It's time to catch those thermals, cause we're gonna fly high with Nephthys. But before we continue, a quick reminder to please like and subscribe if you've enjoyed my content so far. We're on the road to 100,000 subscribers, and what better way to travel down the road than on your Duel Runner? We'll be covering iconic 5D's characters along the way, and our next stop is 20K, where we'll start the Yusei Explained series, covering Stardust, Junk, and whatever other cards we can play to help us rev it up. We've also got our Discord, where everyone is looking to be the next Hyperlink Blocked, and a Twitter where you can stay up to date on channel news and my bad takes. And if you really like what I do here, please consider joining my YouTube membership. It's basically like a Twitch sub, emotes included, or backing me on Patreon, where you can vote on a video that I make every month. It also gets you early access to my videos via the patron-only section of my Discord, provided I get the video done ahead of schedule. And whether you're a member or a patron, I get a schedule sent to you on the first week of the month, so you know what to expect for the next 4 weeks. Thank you all so much for watching, and now, back to the video. So, what's the deal with Nephthys? Well, they're a theme that's all about destroying their own cards for value. Monster-wise, they're either Fire Attribute Winged Beasts that are either level 8 or a Link monster, or they're a level 2 Wind Attribute Spellcaster, there's no in between. And in line with Duel Monster's original influence, this phoenix actually has its roots in Egyptian mythology, named after the goddess of the same name. In fact, since it's called the Sacred Phoenix of Nephthys, it's not necessarily Nephthys themselves, so this could be less influenced by and more an extension of their actual power, which could mean we might get Nephthys proper as their own monster later on down the line, and that'd be pretty cool, though maybe that would be a bit too sacrilegious to depict an actual god in-game. This may seem a bit counterintuitive, but since the winged beasts tend to have a lot of our combo payoffs, let's start with the Spellcasters, and the one that started it all was Hand of Nephthys. They have 600 attack and defense, and you contribute them along with another monster to special summon Sacred Phoenix of Nephthys from your hand or deck. Being a level 8 in old school Yu-Gi-Oh was a big burden, so it was handy that they had a way to get them onto the field quicker. Sure, it cost the same amount of monsters to summon, but if you left your opponent with a single monster, they could windmill slam Hand onto the field and activate their effect to get Phoenix, bypassing the need for the additional normal summon. You gotta hand it to them. They're pretty useful. Further support in Hidden Summoners would take Hand's stat line as a base, but their effects were much more geared towards their revered Phoenix. They each have an effect where they can destroy a card in the hand to gain some kind of immediate benefit, and another that triggers during your next standby phase after they were destroyed by a card effect, paralleling Sacred Phoenix of Nephthys. This means you can summon out whichever spellcaster will get you the immediate effect that you want, while destroying another one to get you something a little extra to help your later turns. Disciple of Nephthys has 0 attack and 2000 defense, and during your main phase they can destroy a card in your hand, and if you do, add a Nephthys monster from your deck to your hand, except another copy of themselves. And during your next standby phase, after Disciple was destroyed by a card effect and sent to the grave, you can add a Nephthys spell or trap from your deck to your hand. Disciple fills a lot of very important niches in the theme. They fix your hand while enabling other effects, and can search out your ritual spell, which I hear is very important for ritual decks. But for crying out loud, can we provide this child with some dignity and give them some headwear that actually fits? If they're going to be praying to an ancient firebird that rises from holy ashes, they might as well be able to see it. Chronicler of Nephthys has 300 attack and 1200 defense, and they can target a Nephthys card in your grave except another copy of itself, and on resolution you destroy a card in your hand, and if you do, you add the targeted card to your hand. And during your next standby phase, after being destroyed by a card effect and being sent to the grave, you can also add a Nephthys card from your grave to your hand, except another copy of itself. With all the kindling you're going to be throwing into the grave to get your deck going, Chronicler is going to have a lot of targets to choose from, not least of which being the ritual spell, because they can grab cards, not just monsters. Just make sure that if you've destroyed a Nephthys already, that you let it rest in the grave until your next turn, as they do need to stay there until their trigger resolves to get the benefit. None of this is going to work out if your monsters aren't all on the same page. Defender of Nephthys has 1400 attack and 200 defense, and during your main phase you can destroy a card in your hand, and if you do, special summon a level 4 or lower Nephthys monster from your hand, except another copy of itself. And during the next standby phase, after it's been destroyed by a card effect and sent to the grave, you can destroy any Nephthys monster in your deck. They're excellent at mobilizing your forces while enabling their effects, and being able to destroy Nephthys cards from your deck means you can just throw Sacred Phoenix into your grave to set up their next revival, or set up any standby phase effects of your Spellcasters that you anticipate will be helpful. What gets me though is the level distinction. They could have just said level 2, but they distinctly said 4 or lower. Is there supposed to be more Nephthys support in the future? Is it going to connect them with the Horus cards?
Are they in the vault with the Nekroz Trap card? I want answers, Konami.
Matriarch of Nephthys appears to be the current version of Hand of Nephthys, still rocking that 600 attack and defense stat line. They can target a level 4 or lower Nephthys monster in your grave, and on resolution, destroy a card in your hand, and if you do, special summon the targeted monster in defense position, but its effects are negated. Also, during the next standby phase after Matriarch was destroyed by a card effect and sent to the grave, you can special summon them from your grave. Matriarch is all about enabling other on-destruction effects. It kinda bites that you can't get the search from a revived Disciple, or add back a card from Chronicler, but now they have another chance to be destroyed by another card effect to fuel their power. And since Matriarch self-revives under those conditions, you'll at least have one card to provide a steady stream of advantage. And bonus, making rank 2s with them is gonna be a breeze. Next, we have a couple of ritual monsters, but for full context, let's take a look at their ritual spell first so we know how to make them. Rebirth of Nephthys is a ritual spell that can be used to ritual summon any Nephthys ritual monster. But if you think this means we can't use pre-preparation of rites with it, then have I got some card text for you. It has the usual ritual spell text. You have to tribute monsters from your hand or field whose levels are equal to or exceed the monster you want to ritual summon. Then, if you tributed Devotee of Nephthys or Cerulean Sacred Phoenix of Nephthys, you can destroy a card on the field. So technically, there are specifically named ritual monsters on here, so we're all clear to run one of the best pieces of ritual support ever printed. And to cap things off, it's also removal if you used either of the two rituals listed as tribute fodder. But the clergy might want to look into all these cracks. I don't think the architect had those in mind when recreating the likeness of an ancient avian deity. Devotee of Nephthys is a ritual monster with 1200 attack and defense, and if ritual summoned, you can special summon a Nephthys monster from your deck, and during the end phase of the turn you activated this effect, destroy Devotee. Also, while in the grave, you can destroy a Nephthys card in your hand to special summon Devotee from your grave. It's not going to trigger the first effect, but at least it's another enabler for destroying your own Nephthys cards, and gets another body on board for other summons. And trust me, getting as many cheap ritual monsters onto the board as possible is going to be very important very soon. And I've gotta say, I love the shade of blue going on here. It really brings out the color of the all-consuming flame that's going to envelop the world. Very chic. Conductor of Nephthys is a ritual monster with 2000 attack and 0 defense, and if ritual summoned, you can special summon a Nephthys ritual monster from your hand or deck, except another copy of itself, and bonus, it counts as a ritual summon. Also, if they're tributed or destroyed by a Nephthys card effect, you can activate an effect at that time, which will resolve during your next standby phase, which is very unorthodox for the theme. When it does resolve, you destroy up to 3 Nephthys cards, except ritual monsters, one each from your hand, field, and deck. So you get self-Trishalud? Kinda, but at least you, at minimum, can destroy a card in your deck and can otherwise blast cards at your convenience. But the real prize is the 2-for-1 ritual summon. It's a shame you can't search it with pre-preparation of rites like the other two, but you can summon Devotee for another free Nephthys, or Cerulean Nephthys for some big beats, all on the cheap. They're a pretty great role model when it comes to conducting your summons. Now it's time for the big birds. Sacred Phoenix of Nephthys has 2400 attack and 1600 defense, and once per turn during your next standby phase after having been destroyed by a card effect and sent to the grave, the Sacred Phoenix is special summoned from the grave, and if you do, you destroy all spells and traps on the field. While not particularly big by modern standards, 2400 still makes for a solid attack stat, and can even trade with the Mighty Monarchs, though you'd much rather be the subject of Zaborg's Lightning than their mixed martial arts. Notably though, the card text does not state from where it had to be destroyed, just that it had to be destroyed. Modern card design has done a lot to take advantage of this, so if you can find a way to destroy Phoenix, say, from your hand, then you can summon them without burning too many resources. They also have a new ritual retrain, Cerulean Sacred Phoenix of Nephthys. They're a ritual monster with 3000 attack and 1000 defense, and during your main phase you can destroy any number of Nephthys cards in your hand and or face up on your field, then destroy an equal amount of monsters your opponent controls. Also, during your next standby phase after being destroyed by a battle or card effect and sent to the grave, you can special summon them from the grave, much like the original, except you don't get the added Heavy Storm effect. It's certainly a much more imposing boss monster, allowing you to throw your smaller Nephthys at problem creatures, or even itself if you're desperate, and can revive itself if you do so. But without the spell and trap destruction, it kinda feels like it's lost its way. It may not mean much in the grand scheme of things, but it's leaving me feeling a little blue. Now it's time for our Link monsters. Nephthys, the Sacred Preserver, is a Link 2 monster with 1200 attack, requiring 2 Nephthys monsters as material. And if it's been Link summoned, you can either add a level 8 Winged Beast monster from your deck to your hand while adding a ritual spell from your grave to your hand, or destroy a Nephthys monster that Preserver points to special summon a Nephthys with a different original name from your grave, but negate its effects. This is some pretty groovy hand fixing, especially with our ability to throw out enough monsters to make this work. If you already have either Phoenix in hand, you can use Defender or Matriarch to summon a second Nephthys for Preserver's Link summon, add the Winged Beast, get back the ritual spell, and you're good to go. And being able to destroy Matriarch every turn to get another Nephthys, especially Cerulean Phoenix if it gets stuck in there, is a great value play. The name is pretty ironic though. It certainly expects us to destroy a bunch of things for something calling itself the Preserver. Now it's time for the biggest and baddest of all our bosses, Nephthys the Sacred Flame. They're a Link 3 monster with 2400 attack, requiring 2 or more monsters as material, including at least 1 ritual monster. While in the extra monster zone, monsters your opponent controls cannot target Nephthys monsters in any of your main monster zones for attacks, which is rather fortunate considering their poor stat lines. It also gains a number of effects depending on the number of ritual monsters used as material. With 1 or more, Sacred Flame can't be destroyed by battle. Make it with 2, something very easy to do with Conductor, Sacred Flame gains 1200 attack and cannot be destroyed by card effects, and if made using 3 whole rituals, neither player can target Sacred Flame with card effects, and it gains another 1200 attack. Play your cards right, and you'll make it so your opponent needs to have some kind of non-targeting, non-destruction effect, cause nothing else is gonna get past them. And with the attack protection for your smaller monsters, you can continue to run through your advantage engine every turn with little interruption while hitting your opponent with that hunka burnin' death. We've also got a couple of other Nephthys cards that aren't so much retrains as reinterpretations. They're not necessarily better or more modern versions, rather they keep the general feel of the original's effect but recontextualize them to fit another theme. Dark Nephthys is a dark attribute monster that otherwise shares the same stats as the original. And if you have 3 or more dark attribute monsters in your grave and Dark Nephthys is in your hand, you can banish 2 of them from your grave to send Dark Nephthys from your hand to the grave, and during the next standby phase after doing this, you special summon them from the grave. And if Dark Nephthys is special summoned in any way, you can target a spell or trap on the field and destroy it. So it is a Nephthys card for the purposes of card effects, but since the theme doesn't have the right attributes to make the most of it, it's best that you keep this deck building option in the dark.
Menaphis Nephthys is a light attribute worm monster,
but otherwise shares all of its stats with original Nephthys, and if special summoned by a Menaphis monster's effect, it banishes all set spells and traps on the field. And if banished during the standby phase of the next turn, you can shuffle the banished Nephthys into your deck to add a Menaphis card from your deck to your hand. Once again, we can see the anti-back row theming of the original, but it's just not going to cut it for our deck, especially in light of its Menaphis reliance. Aside from the ritual spell, we have 2 other pieces of spell and trap support, and the first is Last Hope of Nephthys. It's essentially Scrap Dragon in a spell, having you target a Nephthys card you control and another card your opponent controls and destroy them both. It's great at enabling your own destruction effects while acting as spot removal against your opponent. Not much to complain about here. The name, though, really bugs me. Like, isn't this what you wanted? Is the Phoenix Awakening a bad thing? Were they tricked in some way? Did my joke about Preserver actually touch on the plot twist? Gosh, I hope not. Our last card is Awakening of Nephthys, a continuous trap that grants all Nephthys monsters you control a 300 attack boost. If this face-up card in the spell and trap zone is destroyed by a card effect and sent to the grave, you can special summon a Nephthys monster from your hand, deck, or grave, but destroy it during the end phase. This card is not good. 300 may be good for Spartans, but it's not a substantive enough boost for the kinds of monsters we're working with. And while having an effect that triggers after being destroyed does work out flavor-wise, none of our spellcasters can trigger it because they can only destroy cards in hand. And if we're using Sacred or Cerulean Nephthys to pop this, then we've already got them in rotation, so what's even the point? The only thing this card seems to do is wrap up what happened in Last Hope. I guess Blue Phoenix was bad, but now that Conductor has interacted with it, it's now good Sacred Phoenix? I don't know, this story is already convoluted and it's only 14 cards long. Let's go on to the next part before I start trying to connect them with the Endymion storyline or something. So that's all the Nephthys cards, but what do we do with them? Well, with stats like these, we aren't exactly going to be the first ones to finish our rounds at an event. But we do have monsters that can trade cards for our opponent's monsters, one that causes a back row wipe, and a protector link to make sure all of our combo pieces don't get stomped on. This sounds like we're going to be playing Control, but here's the rub. Because the Sacred Phoenix doesn't really have a friend or foe distinction when it comes to its removal, we can't use traditional floodgates to shut off our opponent's options. So while we have the removal necessary to disable our opponent's field, we don't have the kind of stun capabilities necessary to keep that board from developing outside of our reach. So we're kind of forced to be as aggro as possible. So the key to their success might not be in how far we can push pure Nephthys, but in how we blend them with other themes. Cosmo, for instance, love it when their cards get destroyed from anywhere. Thankfully, any combination of ship and pilot can get you off the ground, but it may not be the exact ones you're looking for. Previously, Cosmo splashed in Fire King Island as a way to destroy cards in hand, but on top of it being a ticking time bomb, it conflicted with the deck's own field spell, Cosmo Town. But the Nephthys spellcasters can do the exact same thing without accidentally board wiping you, though at the cost of your normal summon, and since they don't apply any restrictions, you can move forward with both game plans fairly easily. And heck, with Emergency Teleport at 2, the normal summon isn't even that big of an issue. I told you it was clear to come off the list. And speaking of Fire Kings, they make for fast friends as well. Maintaining a cycle of Sacred Phoenix and Garunix means you'll be stripping your opponent of a number of cards every turn, while you reap all the benefits. Sure, the spellcasters are all wind, so most of the Fire King synergies go right over their head, but the cards focusing on the Phoenixes all work with Garunix, and vice versa in the case of cards like Onslaught and Circle of the Fire Kings. However, if you want to play the deck as the Ennead intended, Impcantations can be a great help. They can search out all the pieces that you need, and the material goes a long way considering your best ritual is only level 2. And since the Impcantation ritual spell is generic, you could run a couple of off-theme ones to round things out. Like Demise! Those monsters love destroying cards. We also can't forget the potential rank 2s we can lean into. There's currently only 22 of them, and it's not exactly bursting at the seams with quality cards, but Daigusto Phoenix is a double attacker that can lock in up to 3,000 points of damage if you need help closing out a game. Gachi Gachi Gantetsu can help bolster our middling stat lines, and the Phantom Knights of Cursed Javelin shuts off a monster's effect and makes their attack 0, so we're not entirely without options. As for a silly tech pick, Cymorg Bird of Sovereignty makes its return once again. Since its link materials require at least one winged beast, Nephthys the Sacred Preserver and any other monster can make it. Use its end phase effect to get Phoenix Nephthys onto the board, and as long as you can keep the rebirth effect in rotation, you can keep blowing up back row to ensure Sovereignty can summon other big beasts like Garunix. Or throw in Apex Avian, I mean, who cares about bricks anyway? And that's all I've got for Nephthys. While their extended appearances haven't resulted in the same kind of impact that its initial release did, that didn't take away from how important it was in shaping some of the most influential mechanics in the game today. Destroying one's own cards has gone from being a drawback to an enabler in the right deck, and its imprint can be seen not just on things like Fire Kings, but also Pendulums, Dinosaurs, and arguably True Draco. It's not destroying, specifically, but you do gain benefits for having the cards get sent to the grave. It's not really a competitive contender, but playing it sure is a Phoenix Wing Wind blast. But now, I want to hear what you all have to say. Do you agree that, at this point, it's probably better to let sleeping birds roost? Or is the Sacred Phoenix just moments away from an explosive rebirth? Let me know in the comments, and if you haven't already, please make sure to like, Subscribe and share this video around, it really does a lot to help me out. I'd also like to take this time to thank my lovely patrons, including this month's illustrious Quasar Commander, CozyBoat275, Nebula Navigators Benjamin Meisner, Billy Spence, Genesis Yu-Gi-Oh!, Gloomba331, Panther J, Shep Xiao Shep, The Wizard Moose and the Fresh Prince of Conair, Cosmic Crusaders, Chaz Ghost, Colin Todd, George Schaefer, Hakatana, the Legendary Raven and Panda PLS, as well as the wonderful Starlight Explorers you see on screen now. And if you want to see another video where I talk about a bunch of winged beasts, check out this video that's all about Raid Raptors. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.